Real quick note, I noticed something wasn't working right when I was doing this, and it was because I had not opened up the correct workspace. We have a custom workspace that is best for most of the work we do within our company that is different from the default one. So when I did the Vectorworks installation, I followed the guide to install it and make sure it's all entered in properly, but you actually have to make sure you go and open that workspace. And it's real simple. Just basically, I noticed this wasn't behaving correctly when I would do my viewports and a handful of other things. And all you have to do is go to Tools, go down to Workspaces, and you're probably on the default Spotlight workspace. Go to the FAV Spotlight. That's all you gotta do. I'm gonna do a quick walkthrough on doing a basic 3D drawing of an LED wall. I'm going to go ahead and do one using ground support, and I'm going to try to focus on the more basic aspects of drawing within Vectorworks and using 3D space. So first thing I'm going to do, you'll notice when you open up Vectorworks, there's no print sheets or anything. I probably need to change what it opens as a default one, but it defaults to just this blank one. So I want to do a new drawing, and you always want to work off of a Freeman template. So for my new one, I'm going to use Freeman Exhibit. And you'll notice when you do this, this template has design layers already created for you, and it's got sheet layers. And this is one of the most thinking between the design layers and the sheet layers is one of those kind of fundamental things you have to keep straight while you're working in Vectorworks. That kind of goes along with thinking between design layers and classes. So you can think of design layers as the actual virtual space that you're doing your drawing, your kind of virtual canvas. And then your sheet layers, think of as basically templates that you print on. So you essentially do your drawings in this virtual 2D or 3D space, and then you take snapshots of them to put on your print sheets, because your print sheets are what's going to have your title blocks. They are sized and configured to print to a specific paper size. So to start with, so just constantly be aware of what sort of layer of Vectorworks you're looking at. So we're going to build this LED wall within the design layers. I'm going to constantly use two hotkeys, and that's going to be this H for the hand tool for moving around, and X will get you back to your regular selection tool. So to start off with, let's look at our, let's also think, these are also the 3D angles that you can view your space in. So your default into top or plan mode, and it's not crazy critical to understand the difference between plan mode and top mode, but basically your plan mode is going to look at a 2D component of your symbols that you're dropping, and top mode is actually going to look at the 3D wireframe version of that, since we're going to be drawing with 3D objects. Let's go ahead and just start off. Just go to your wireframe top mode. Go into your resource manager, which I have as just a floating window that auto hides So yours may or may not be set up this way, but we're going to go look at the FAV LED panels. Let's just go ahead. Let's see here. Let's just go ahead and do a unilumen, just like a 4x7. So you'll notice there's two folders. This one has a few different options of 3D files. One's going to be a single with the bumper bar at the top, similarly a double, and just a single panel. And when we look at the bumper bars, this is basically components that are used in these other symbols. So we're just going to work on the single frame, or single tile. It doesn't matter too much where you start off. I generally start just a little above the 0, 0, and just kind of in the positive side of the quadrant. It's not super critical. And this is just a top view of a tile. So I dropped one tile down. Let's go ahead and flip to the front view. And there you see the front of that tile. So what you have to think about when you're drawing things in 3D space is the angle that you're looking at your drawing, because you can draw this one, looking at it from the top, kind of in the background. And if I drop another tile right next to it, when I'm looking at it, the front view, they may or may not be actually right next to each other. So I'm just going to kind of draw it. It looks like it's just sitting to the right of it. When we flip to the top, you can see it's actually really far forward, but we were just looking at the front. So they look like they're side by side, but you just have to remember when you're drawing things that you have to check multiple views and make sure that they all line up properly. So I'm going to go ahead and sit these two right next to each other. So you'll notice that you've got handlebars and grab points all over the 3D objects. And when your mouse cursor turns into this plus sign is when you can grab it from the point. So usually it's good to grab these green points because they're insertion points and they are designed to be like a corner of the object so that it will meet up nicely with another one. So we've got two tiles side by side, nothing crazy. Another quick tip is when you are dragging things and you want to just say you just want to move things straight forward. If I've got the mouse button held down because I'm dragging it, but if you also have the shift button held, it keeps it fixed to common angles. So I'm shifting at 45, but I usually bring it because I just want to shift it straight forward or backwards. If we go to the front view, I'm going to go ahead and just build this entire wall from the front because that is the most straightforward way to do it. And what I usually do is once I've got a tile in there, so I don't have to drag every individual one and just drag a new one. Well, okay, you can do a couple of ways. So I'm going to do this row where you want to click. You can see I've got the insertion point in the top left corner of here, and it kind of snaps to that corner of that tile. So you can click once, and it gives you an option to kind of flip things around, which you don't really want to do. So then we'll just click a second time, and it's there. And I'm going to do that again here. Click once, click twice. There it is. I'm going to do 7 tiles wide. Click once, click twice. Click once, click twice. Click once, click twice. Just to kind of double check things, I'm always flipping my views to make sure, I didn't, put one in backwards or somewhere I didn't want to go. The other thing that is really handy and convenient, I hit X there to just get back to my regular selection tool. And I'm just shifting where my screen's looking with the hand tool. So we'll go back to the select tool. And one super handy thing to do is just to copy and paste. So I'm Going to hit Control C and Control V. So select them. It's worth noting that you must fully get around objects to select them. So if you only have it halfway across, it's not going to select it until you get past it. So Control C or Command C. I'm just going to click above it. Command V. We got another row. Line up that corner. Let's go ahead and just double check that they pasted in the same plane in that direction. And since I'm going 4 high, I'm just going to recopy that whole deal there. Click above it. You'll notice you can kind of control, ish where they're going to land by wherever you most recently clicked. And then we can bring them to be right there. So next thing I'm going to do, let's take a look one more time at the top. They are all lined up nice and pretty. Let's go ahead and build a truss upright. So to do this, I'm going to do it. How about we'll just go over here to the right of it, and I'm going to build a single vertical, and then replace it. So let's go into the rigging. Truss. 12 by 12 box. You notice we've got a 2-foot floor base. I'm going to use one of them. And, well, let me just go ahead and plop this down first. So I'm going to just place it right down there at the bottom. There are 2 kinds of truss. And one of the reasons for this, there's horizontal and vertical. And I'm going to grab, how about an 8-foot vertical? And one of the reasons, I'm going to drop a horizontal one here, and I'm going to drop a vertical one, is when you are in the top plan view. Well, here, let's look at top. So you can see the top of the wireframe of my horizontal and my vertical piece of truss. And when you go to plan view, all of these have a 2-dimensional symbol that is kind of attached to it so that it can have a cleaner look when you're in plan view. I'm sure there are other reasons, but this is kind of how I've always made sense in my head. So I can't rotate this into this horizontal piece. I can't rotate up into a vertical piece. It's not going to look, well, it's not going to let me. But it did let me. It would not look right because I would have this plan symbol on top of a vertical piece of truss, and it just wouldn't happen. So when you're drawing with truss, that is why you always have to make sure you're using the correct orientation of vertical or horizontal stick. For this, let's go ahead first of all and just drop it the center of the truss onto the center of that base plate. We're going to go to the front view, and we want to make sure that they are lined up vertically in the correct fashion. So I use a lot of zooming in and out to kind of move my cursor around, if you notice. I don't know why I do it that way, but just how I do it. So I grabbed this set of handles. It's on the very bottom plate of it, and I'm going to set it so that it's on the top plate of the truss. So notice I set it there and not so it's resting on the bottom of the truss, just because it just bugs me if it is that way. So now everyone there are kind of different ways people like to do this, but I personally like to have it 45'd. This isn't necessary, but it's just how I do it. So we can go into an easy way to do it: modify, rotate. Go rotate. Let's just do this. You can rotate in 3D space if you do it on the right axis, I think, but I'm just going to go rotate since we're looking at. Okay. So look at it in 2D space. You can do it a couple of different ways. One is just go modify, rotate. This option works when you're in the plan view. Another thing is your rotate tool, which I think is the protractor. Nope. I always just hit R. I don't think my. Nope. It's the radius tool. Option equal sign. Well, that's not what I remembered it being. You click on your point of rotation, you pick a grab point, and I pick the corner so that I can then hold shift and bring this vertical. And that gives me a 45-degree rotation. Last thing I'm going to do is last thing I'm going to do is place this where I want it to meet up behind the LED wall. I got cut off because I reached my limit of my free recording time. So last thing I was doing is I was moving this little guy around, and basically I lined him up with this seam on the tiles, and then I dragged him with the shift button straight back so that this pipe lined up perfectly with the seam. Next thing, I just kind of did a bunch of this already and then didn't realize I ran out of time. I'm going to fix my layer. So I dropped this in the same layer as all the LED tiles, which is the audio video layer. And you don't have to do this, but I like to just keep the truss in its own layer. So I'm just going to drop it to the rigging layer. So when you click on one of your objects, on the object info, you can change which layer it's in. You'll notice it deselected them right when I did that, and that's because I'm still looking at the audio video layer, and I can show and snap other layers, but I cannot modify other layers. So I cannot select these unless I am in the rigging layer now. So I can either go over here to the rigging layer, there they are, now I can click, move, drag, copy, whatever. Or if you are trying to get something and you're like, it's not letting me, I don't know where it is, right click and go force select, and it selected that thing and it moved me over to the correct layer. So I'm going to select both the base plate and the truss. So I'm going to hit shift, click on the base plate. Now I got them both. I'm going to hit Command C to copy, click over here, Command V to paste. Let's go ahead and line these guys up on the corner. And the other thing I'm going to do to line them up correctly is I'm going to go to the right or left side, just basically one of the sides. And I just, because this is how I do it, I just don't like to eyeball things. So this is the edge of the base plate in the background, and this is the edge of the one that we just grabbed. So, oops. So I'm going to drag this, and I'm going to snap it to that corner so that I know that both of my truss uprights are lined up perfectly. So if I hit the number 2 to create a line, and I click and I hold shift, it's going to touch just the corner because they are lined up exactly. So you could kind of eyeball things, but like, close enough, but I just don't like to do drawings that way. The next thing we got to do here, you want to check your vertical height. So what I generally do, since this, I had actually already done this and I kind of had to backtrack. So if we go over to our audio video layer, we want to make sure that our wall is just at the right height. So generally what I do is I'll shift drag it up so it's out of the way. I'm going to take the line tool. I use line tools to give me a specific spacing on things a lot, whether it's like chairs and aisles. So if I hit shift while I draw that line, it's going to be perfectly vertical. I'm going to hit the Y distance, the change in Y. It's basically the length of this line to 2 feet. So I've got a 2-foot line here, and it is touching the edge of this base plate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the end of it. I'm going to hold shift while I do this so that so I go exactly straight and don't veer off to the left or right like that. So hold shift and I'm going to let it grab onto the edge of that LED wall. Now I'm going to shift select the LED wall as well. So I've got all of these and I've got the line selected, and I'm going to bring it back down. And when I do that, this will snap right onto the corner where I started it. So now I got the LED wall in the correct location, and it's sitting right on top of this 2-foot line, so it is at the correct trim height, because I just arbitrarily decided we're going 2 feet off the ground. Now, before we can give this to anyone, remember we have our design layers that we are building this in. So right now this exists in the audio video layer and the rigging layer for the truss. We need to create a print sheet that we can actually create a PDF or a paper copy of. So these are the ones that have all the title blocks. I'm going to go ahead and throw it in. How about an 11 by 17 landscape? So let's go back to our video wall. So click on one of your design layers. We're going to draw a rectangle that we're going to use as a viewport. So I need to fix something's acting funny with these. So I zero out our fill and our lines. So I basically am drawing just a imaginary box around it. So number 4 is your hotkey for this. So you just draw a rectangle. This is your crop window basically of your viewport. View, create viewport. You will do this many times. Gives you the viewport window. The most important thing to select on here is which print sheet you want to go on. So I'm going to go on this 11 by 17. I always leave this unchecked because this basically creates a label and a scale and a title for your viewport, and I just don't want them. And you can select your scale. You can change this later. I already know that I want this one to be, we'll try this, 1/2 inches foot. You can just leave it and then change it later to figure out how you want it. So let's see how that looks. I'm gonna hit OK. That'll work. I still have my rectangle tool. So if you hit X, then you go back to your select tool, and I'm gonna just drop this guy over here in the corner. Let's go ahead and create another one of a different view. So if we go back to our design layer, and let's look at a right side. So yeah, we can create a couple of different ones. So 4 is our rectangle tool. I'm gonna draw a rectangle. Go to View, Create Viewport. All the same stuff. Sounds good. Hit OK. Oh, I did. Okay, I gotta fix the size. So hit X. You already have it selected, so you can edit the object info, and you got your scale right here. So if you remember, we went up to half inch. I'm gonna just because I'm going to line these up on this plane so that they sit nicely side by side. The reason I like doing a couple of different ones because you can put dimensions on these and you can show how far forward the base plate is and all that stuff. Let's just do one more. This is totally unnecessary, but you can just kind of throw them on, especially if you have outriggers on your support structure or anything like that. Is we can go to one of the ISO views and we can do a viewport of this. I'm doing something's wrong here with how I'm doing that, so take this with a big old grain of salt. I'm going to keep this one smaller. The ISO view is not really super helpful other than just seeing the overall shape of the structure from a 3D view. And, oh, good Lord, calm down. So if you have outriggers, it kind of helps to see, but you'll have your side drawings and your front drawings. So next important thing we got to cover in here is hitting the dimensions. So if you click on your viewport, right click on it, go down to edit annotations. This is basically, we can put annotations onto this 3D viewport. So remember, we're in a print sheet right now. So we're designing, we're referencing the 3D space this is drawn in, but we added a tile block on here, we're adding dimensions, we're working on the print. So it's kind of like a different virtual space. We're designing our big sheet of paper that's going to come out of the plotter. So in here, if we go over to your constrain linear dimension tool, this is the one you'll use most, and the hotkey for that is N. This lets us draw dimensions. So make sure you've got some sort of line on there. So solid black line sounds good. I'm going to go from this top corner to this bottom corner. This is the dimension of our video surface. You just want to put basically all the useful dimensions on here. So you can go from the floor to the bottom of the wall, because that's also important, 2 feet. You know what else you could include on there that's useful? You could either do it, and you can do this a couple of different ways. So you can go from the bottom and you can go all the way to the top. And then you can go outside of them. You can do that for an overall height. Or you could do it, you can do it on this side just to kind of break it up, and just go with whatever looks the cleanest. And we'll throw in a width. So, ta-da. Hit exit, and look, our viewport fit X. So we have my regular thing is now nicely noted. You could do it on this one too. Edit annotations, hit the N button, and you can show, this is like, hey, looky here. The base plate sticks forward 5 inches, because people like to know that. Or you could do, go from the front of the wall to the back of the base plate, so you can see if they build a structure, we need at least 3 foot of depth, it's like stuff like that. It's kind of useful. So this is, you'd want to include stuff like this if you're sending this to Expo for them to build an MIS surround, so they know what to do. You also want to go ahead and edit your title block. So when you click on the title block, you can go right click properties, or if you're, that's just going to bring up this object info window. So when you just select your title block, you just scroll down to the bottom of this and you hit edit title block. And here you'll want to say, treeway scale, say 1/2 inch equals 1 foot. Project, a lot of times what you want to do is delete the event, because that's this window here, and then you can import a picture, put all the relevant info in here, put your name, all the stuffs. If you want to drop a picture in there, you can go File, Import, Picture, Image File, it's in here somewhere. And then you can just select, here, we'll do just a picture of the JW Marriott in Indianapolis. When you're scaling that corner in, hold the Shift button to constrain it. Drag it over here. Oh, still doesn't fit. Come on. There. So now you got, if you shift arrow button when you have something selected, you can kind of move it around that way. So there you go. Last but not least is exporting. So File, Export, Export PDF. These settings are all just fine. Hit export. It's going to ask you where you're going. And hit save. Look at that. I've got 1 minute left on the clock. There's my PDF. In all its glory. You should also include parts lists on here. There's a text block you want to import as a viewport that shows, the number of truss sticks, the number of tiles, and all that. So that's something I forgot to show, but I was just mostly showing the basics of creating a viewport and moving and dropping things around in 3D space. So that covers that. We can go over some more details and more advanced stuff later. But for now, that's all I got.